The rain came down in unrelenting sheets, blurring the line between the sky and the earth until everything dissolved into a smear of gray. The narrow two-lane highway stretched endlessly through the wilderness, its slick asphalt glistening beneath the storm. Clara Bennett gripped the steering wheel of her old silver sedan, her knuckles pale against the faint light of the dashboard. The wipers screeched across the glass, barely keeping pace with the downpour. She could barely see 10 feet ahead, but she kept driving, because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering. Her eyes flickered to the passenger seat. A wedding bouquet lay there, wilted and soaked, its white roses browned at the edges. The sight made her chest tighten. She had thrown it out hours ago, only to pick it back up again like a fool. It wasn't the bouquet that mattered, it was what it represented, the life she was supposed to have. The one she had run away from. The car jolted suddenly, and the engine coughed, sputtered, and died. The dashboard lights flickered once before going black. Clara's heart dropped. No, 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 she muttered, twisting the key again. Nothing. She tried once more, and the silence that followed felt heavier than the storm. She hit the steering wheel with her palm, her breath shaky and uneven. Perfect. Just perfect. She was miles from the nearest town, somewhere between where she'd been and where she didn't yet know she was going. Her phone had one bar of service that vanished as soon as she opened the screen. She tried calling anyway, but the device beeped uselessly, mocking her. The storm outside howled louder, and the air in the car turned cold. She swallowed hard, forcing back the fear creeping up her throat. Pulling on her coat, Clara pushed open the car door, and the wind slapped her face with icy rain. She stepped into a puddle that soaked her shoes instantly, muttering under her breath as she popped the hood. Steam hissed up like an angry spirit. She had no idea what she was looking for, but doing something felt better than standing still. Her trembling hands fumbled with the battery cable, tightening it with a coin she dug out of her pocket. It was useless, of course. The car wasn't coming back to life tonight. Her breath came out in small, visible clouds as she leaned against the fender. Cars occasionally whizzed by, headlights slicing through the storm before disappearing into the darkness. Each one gave her a flicker of hope, maybe this one will stop, but none did. They all sped past, just as she expected they would. For the first time that night, she felt small, so small that it almost hurt to breathe. She had walked away from everything, believing she was strong, believing she didn't need anyone. Yet now, standing in the freezing rain, she realized how alone she really was. She stared down the endless road, blinking rain from her lashes. The clock on her dashboard, now dark, had read 11:47 p.m. before it died. Midnight was closing in, and the world felt as if it had forgotten she existed. Then, just when she began to accept that no one was coming, two beams of light broke through the storm behind her. A pair of headlights slowed, their glow cutting through the darkness like a promise. The sound of gravel crunching under tires filled the air as the vehicle rolled to a stop a few feet behind her car. Clara's pulse raced. For a brief, fearful moment, she wondered if she should run. But the driver's door opened slowly, and a tall figure stepped out, broad-shouldered, wearing a soaked jacket, his step steady despite the mud. He raised a hand to shield his face from the rain and called out in a deep, steady voice that carried through the storm. "Hey! You okay, ma'am?" Something about the tone, warm, calm, unhurried, cut through her panic. Clara hesitated. It died. I can't get it to start." The man nodded once, his flashlight clicking on. "Let me take a look," he said simply. "Name's Jake Turner. I'm a mechanic down the road." And for the first time that night, Clara felt a spark of relief. Someone had stopped. Someone had seen her. She didn't know it yet, but that stranger in the rain was about to change everything. The storm had dwindled to a steady drizzle by the time Jake Turner popped the hood of Clara's car. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the rain-slick metal as steam hissed from the overheated engine. Clara stood nearby, her arms crossed tightly, the damp fabric of her coat clinging to her skin. She shivered but said nothing, watching the man move with quiet precision. His hands were sure, practiced, each motion carried the confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. Jake's voice was calm, steady as he leaned over the hood. "Alternators shot," he muttered, the words almost lost beneath the patter of rain. "Battery's dead, too. You're not going anywhere tonight." Clara sighed, pressing her fingers against her temple. "Of course. Because that's exactly what I needed." He glanced up at her, the corner of his mouth twitching with faint amusement. "Rough night?" She let out a small, humorless laugh. "You could say that. I was supposed to be halfway across the state by now." Jake stood upright, closing the hood with a soft thud. He studied her for a moment before nodding toward his truck. "Well, the good news is, I can tow it back to my shop. Got tools, parts, and coffee there. You can warm up while I take a look." Clara hesitated, eyeing the man cautiously. He didn't seem dangerous, his eyes were kind, and there was a steady patience in his tone, but the thought of getting into a stranger's truck in the middle of the night still made her uneasy. "You don't have to do that," she said softly. "I'll figure something out." Jake tilted his head slightly. "Out here? In the middle of nowhere? In the rain?" He motioned to the empty highway stretching in both directions. "You'd be waiting a long time for someone else to stop. Most people don't." That truth hit her harder than she expected. She bit her lip, glancing down. "Yeah. I've noticed." He gave a small, understanding smile and opened the passenger door of his truck. "It's warm inside. You've got my word, you'll be safe." Something in the way he said it, firm, respectful, certain, broke through her hesitation. Clara took a slow breath and climbed into the truck. The cab smelled faintly of motor oil and rain-soaked leather. On the dashboard, taped near the radio, was a faded photograph of a young woman and a boy, both smiling wide, covered in grease and sunlight. Jake slid into the driver's seat and noticed her glance linger on the photo. "My wife and son," he said quietly. "She used to help me at the garage before she passed." "I'm sorry," Clara murmured, unsure what else to say. He nodded, eyes still forward. "Happened a few years ago. Some things you never fix, you just learn to work around them." His voice carried no bitterness, only a quiet truth. They drove in silence for a while, the hum of the engine and the rhythmic sweep of the wipers filling the air. Outside, the world blurred into streaks of silver and black. Inside, Clara felt the first flicker of calm she'd known in days. After a few minutes, Jake glanced sideways at her. "So, where were you headed in such a hurry?" Clara hesitated. She could lie, or she could tell the truth. Maybe it was the storm, maybe the warmth of the truck, but her defenses began to crumble. "I wasn't heading to anywhere," she admitted softly. "I was running away." He didn't respond immediately, just kept his eyes on the road. Then, after a pause, he said, "Well, sometimes running's the only way to figure out what's worth staying for." His words hit her deeper than he probably realized. She stared out the window, blinking against tears she hadn't meant to shed. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence between them wasn't awkward, it was something gentler, like understanding. As they pulled into a gravel driveway, the dim glow of a small garage came into view. The sign above the door read Turner's Auto and Repair. The place looked old but sturdy, with warm light spilling through the window and a dog curled up by the entrance. Jake parked the truck and turned to her with a faint smile. "Welcome to the safest place this side of the highway," he said. "Let's get you dry and get that car sorted." And as Clara stepped out into the soft drizzle, something inside her shifted. For the first time in what felt like forever, she wasn't just running, she was arriving. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving the air crisp and washed clean. Golden light filtered through the dusty windows of Turner's Auto and Repair, catching on the rows of tools neatly arranged along the walls. The scent of oil, rubber, and freshly brewed coffee hung in the air, comforting, grounded, real. Clara sat on an overturned crate near the workbench, her damp clothes now replaced by one of Jake's old flannel shirts that hung loosely over her frame. She wrapped her hands around a steaming mug, feeling the warmth seep into her fingers as she watched him work beneath the hood of her car. Jake moved with a quiet focus, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing forearms dusted with grease and small scars, marks of a man who built and repaired things for a living. The rhythmic click of his wrench echoed softly through the garage. "You're lucky," he said without looking up. "Could have been a lot worse. Alternator's dead, but I've got a spare one that'll fit. Shouldn't take long." Clara smiled faintly. "You call breaking down in the middle of a thunderstorm lucky?" He chuckled under his breath. "Well, you could have been stranded till morning. Most folks drive right by and don't look back." Her gaze dropped to her coffee. "Yeah. I noticed." There was a heaviness in her voice, the kind that came from too many disappointments, too many people who hadn't stayed. Jake wiped his hands on a rag and leaned against the fender, studying her with gentle curiosity. "You said last night you were running away. That's still true this morning?" Clara hesitated, then exhaled slowly. "Yeah. I left my fiancé." Her fingers tightened around the mug. "He wasn't the man I thought he was. Controlling. Cruel in quiet ways. I kept telling myself I'd leave someday, but I never did, until yesterday." She looked up, her eyes glimmering in the morning light. "I drove until the road ran out. Guess it was the universe's way of forcing me to stop." Jake nodded thoughtfully, his expression softening. "Sometimes life breaks down to save you from driving farther in the wrong direction." His words hit her deeper than she expected. "Is that what happened to you?" she asked gently. He paused, looking at the ground. "In a way. My wife, Hannah, and I built this place together. She was the heart of it. We used to joke that she could change a tire faster than I could." He smiled faintly, then the smile faded. "But she got sick, real sick. I tried to fix everything like I always do, but some things," he trailed off, swallowing hard. "Some things aren't meant to be fixed. She passed 5 years ago. Our boy's been living with her parents since then. I couldn't give him what he needed. I was too broken myself." Silence filled the space, heavy yet gentle. Clara's eyes softened with compassion. "I'm sorry, Jake. That must have been." He raised a hand slightly, cutting her off with a quiet smile. "It's all right. Talking about her doesn't hurt like it used to. She'd want me to keep helping people, and I guess, that's what I do now. Fix what I can." Clara's throat tightened. "You really think people can be fixed?" Jake looked at her then, meeting her gaze with a steadiness that made her heart skip. "Not fixed, maybe. But mended. Given a reason to keep going. That's enough." She blinked back tears she hadn't realized were forming. "You make it sound simple." He chuckled softly. "Doesn't mean it's easy." For a while, they both just stood there, the sound of tools clicking, the faint hum of the radio, and the golden morning light spilling between them. There was something profoundly healing in that quiet, something that neither of them could put into words. When Jake finally closed the hood, he turned to her and said, "There. Good as new." Clara smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in years. "You didn't just fix the car, Jake. You fixed something else, too." He looked at her for a long moment before replying softly, "Guess we both needed a tune-up." And in that small garage, surrounded by grease-stained rags and the hum of morning, Clara realized that maybe this broken-down mechanic wasn't just mending engines, he was helping her rebuild the courage to start her life again. By noon, the sun had climbed high, drying the last traces of rain from the cracked asphalt outside Turner's Auto and Repair. The garage door was open, letting in a soft breeze that carried the scent of fresh grass and motor oil. Clara stood beside her newly repaired car, watching as Jake tightened the final bolt and wiped his hands on a rag. The engine purred quietly, steady and strong, so unlike the trembling mess she'd been when she arrived the night before. It was strange how much could change in a single night. Jake glanced at her with a satisfied smile. There we go. She's ready to hit the road again. Won't give you any trouble for a while. Clara smiled, her heart unexpectedly heavy. I can't thank you enough, Jake. Really. I don't even know what I would have done if you hadn't stopped. He shrugged, leaning against the hood. You'd have figured something out. You've got more strength than you think. She shook her head slightly, her voice softer now. No. I was done last night. I thought no one would stop. I thought I'd just disappear, and no one would care. Jake's gaze lingered on her, his expression thoughtful. You'd be surprised how many people feel like that. But the world has a way of sending help when you least expect it. There was something unspoken in his tone, something that made her chest ache. Clara looked around the garage, the shelves lined with neatly arranged tools, the faint hum of an old radio, the coffee mug she'd used still resting on the workbench. For a fleeting moment, it felt like home. Like a place she could belong. He broke the silence first. So, where will you go now? Clara hesitated. Honestly? I don't know. I left behind my old life, my job, my apartment, everything. I just needed to breathe for once, to remember who I am without someone else deciding it for me. She let out a small laugh. Guess that's not much of a plan. Jake smiled gently. It's a start. Sometimes, the best journeys begin when you stop trying to plan them. His words warmed her, simple yet full of truth. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, glancing at him shyly. You sound like someone who's been through this before. Maybe, he said, his eyes soft. After Hannah died, I thought my story was over. I poured everything into this place, fixing cars, keeping busy, until I realized life isn't meant to be survived, it's meant to be lived. Clara looked at him then, really looked. The quiet strength in his face, the weariness softened by kindness, it was the look of someone who'd broken and rebuilt himself more than once. You helped me remember that, she said quietly. That maybe I still have something to live for. Jake cleared his throat, suddenly shy. Well, I'm glad I could help. There was a pause, filled only by the gentle hum of the engine. Then Clara reached into her bag and pulled out a few bills. How much do I owe you? Jake shook his head immediately. You don't. She frowned. Jake. He smiled faintly. You already paid me. Clara tilted her head. How? His voice softened. By reminding me that not everyone leaves for good. Sometimes they just need a reason to come back. Her eyes glistened as she whispered, then maybe. I shouldn't leave just yet. For a moment, the air between them stilled. Then Jake chuckled, his smile breaking into something genuine and warm. Well, if you're staying, you better like coffee and country music. That's all we've got here. Clara laughed through her tears, and it was the first time she'd laughed freely in months. I think I can handle that. Later that afternoon, as they sat on the porch outside the garage, the world felt strangely at peace. The highway stretched ahead, endless and inviting, but Clara no longer felt the pull to run. Instead, she felt something stronger, a quiet hope, a sense of belonging she hadn't known she was missing. And as Jake handed her a cup of coffee and the wind brushed gently through the trees, she realized something simple but profound. Sometimes, the person who stops for you on a dark road doesn't just fix your car, they give you back the courage to start your life again. That night, when she finally drove down that highway, she wasn't running anymore. She was moving forward, because one mechanic had changed everything.